Okay, welcome back to another Between the Pages book chat. And today we have author Alan J. Hess here, and he's going to talk about his middle grade comic book series, The Adventures of Captain Polo. And I'll turn it over to him now and let him introduce himself. Take it away.
Thank you, Anita, very much for having me on the show. This is the first time I'm doing a live show, so I'm excited about that. My name's Alan J. Hesse. I live in Ecuador. I'm originally half British and half French, but I've been living all over the world. And my main series is about climate change. It's an environmental kind of eco-fiction that I write in comic book format, graphic novels. That's what I do. And Captain Polo is a polar bear. He's right behind me on the shelf here, also taking part in the call. I'd be happy to answer any questions about that series or any others that I've got out.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about Captain Polo and his polar bear.
Well, I chose a polar bear. I decided a few years ago, like 4 years ago, to write a comic about climate change because I was finding this subject very overwhelming and increasingly in my professional area. I'm a conservation biologist, and I had to deal with projects that required a climate change element to them. And at the time, about 4 years ago, this subject wasn't in the media as it is today. It wasn't the mainstream media. It was quite a confusing subject. There were a lot of things being thrown around. I thought I'm going to write a comic to understand it better myself, but also teach others, especially middle grade kids and above and older, while I'm doing it. And so I chose the polar bear as my main character. It didn't take long to come up with that idea because the polar bear is one of the species that is most heavily impacted by the melting of the Arctic sea ice. By no means is it the only species. There are whole ecosystems that are threatened by this issue. But everybody knows polar bears, even if they haven't seen one. I haven't seen one myself, except in the zoo. But everyone knows polar bears. It's an apex predator. It's a top predator of the food chain. It's also something that's easy to draw, and that's actually one of my criteria. Is if it's going to be a character that's in almost every frame, it better be easy to draw. And so polar bear is nice and chunky. It's all white. There isn't much color in there. So I created that character for all those reasons.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about his adventures. What does he do?
Yeah, he starts off as a regular old polar bear in the Arctic, who's finding it very difficult to hunt because the sea ice is slippery and sludgy, and he doesn't have the same kind of movement as he has before. This is a real fact affecting polar bears in real life. They find it very hard to hunt their prey. And the whole ecosystem is affected by the melting of the ice, especially in the summer season. So this bear, who has no name at the beginning, he gets cut off from his piece of ice because that piece of ice starts melting and he gets drifting away from the Arctic, and the ocean currents take him south into the North Atlantic. And of course, the ice melts and melts and melts, and he eventually runs into a storm and finds himself pitched into the ocean at the mercy of this terrible storm. And without giving anything more away, he gets out of it. And if you read book 1 in the series, you'll see why. And he ends up with a little boat and a cap. That is the captain's cap that makes him kind of a special character. And from there, he's just trying to get home. That's all he wants to do originally. But he runs into people, characters all over the world as he continues his journey, both human and non-human characters in different locations. So there's a lot of exotic settings. I've done a lot of research on the settings, and he basically goes around the world. And as he goes around the world, he learns more and more about this huge problem called climate change, global warming, and what it means for different people, different communities, different cities, and also, natural systems, wildlife species as well along the way. And so he becomes more and more knowledgeable. This is a bear who's gifted. Captain Polo can speak. He can talk, he can walk bipedally, he can use cash, he can sail a boat, and he can do a lot of other things. So he's a fictional character in that sense. And he gets to know and understand more and more the problem, and he turns into a global superstar during the course of the book, because obviously people are surprised to see a polar bear walking in the middle of East Africa, for example, and talking. And so he becomes this amazing celebrity, and the press help him along the way, becoming more and more famous, and he ends up being a guest of honor of governments, and a guest of honor at celebrity get-togethers and parties. And so his character evolves in that sense. But at the end of the day, he's just a bear. And he's just a bear who's always hungry, and he basically just wants to go home. But he wants to go home to the way he knows home. He doesn't want to go home to a home that's been changed. He wants to go home to home as he knows it. And so that opens up the series. And so it's an ongoing series where there's a lot of content to explore, all kinds of content all over the world.
Okay, so well, obviously the main theme of the series is climate change, but are there any other themes in the series?
Well, yeah, of course, climate change is such a broad subject, but it has so many impacts that affect different communities and people and places in so many different ways. And so the book explores issues that are related, but that may not appear to be related at first. For example, I even get into the subject of the Syrian war refugees. The Syrian war is still ongoing. It's just that the media don't talk about it because people have moved on and there's other things to talk about. But the crisis in the Middle East is ongoing. And the fact is that having done my research, I discovered that one of the biggest problems in the Middle East, about 5 years before the Arab Spring happened, which kind of like was the keg that exploded into the civil war in Syria, was an abnormally long drought in that part of the world. So long, it was 5 years of a drought, no access to water. So many people living in rural areas had no choice but to migrate to the cities. And therefore, they were overcrowded in the cities. People who were desperate, who had lost all their livelihoods, had nothing to lose. This provided a very explosive situation. And that is one of the contributing factors to the Middle Eastern crisis in Syria. It's not the only one, of course, but it's one of the contributing factors. So the book goes into that kind of thing as well. It explores human migration, refugees, also refugees from the oceanic islands, whose islands are disappearing beneath the waves, literally because of rising sea levels. It goes into trophy hunting in Africa. It goes into the guerrilla crisis in Colombia and the conflict, the armed conflict there between armed forces and government forces. All of these, incredibly, have a link that, if you go back far enough, go to the environment, the natural environment, the state of the ecosystems, people's livelihoods, the farmers, all this. So in a way, it's all linked to climate change. So the book goes into all of those things. Deforestation, it goes into, also importantly, it talks a lot about the solutions to these problems, right? It's a positive book. It's not a book about problems. It's a book that says, these are the problems, you got to know what they are, but you know what? There are solutions. These are the solutions. This is what people are already doing. This is what people are going to start doing soon. And the book is there's a lot of positive messaging as well about those solutions.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Did you have any difficulties in writing parts of the book, or any scenes that gave you trouble?
Yeah, I mean, for me, because I'm an author illustrator, that question always has two parts: the part of the actual plot and the writing, and then the actual artwork. And so some scenes required very, very intricate detail to make it look really authentic and get that cultural authenticity. And there's one scene I remember where Captain Polo is being chased by some fishermen in China who wanted to catch him to sell him to the zoo. and he runs into a market in Shanghai, and it's a traditional market, which means it's full of bustle and life and crowded, and there's pots of lobsters steaming and dumplings and people on bicycles and motorbikes, and it's just crowded with people. This is Shanghai. And so I had a hell of a job drawing that, because I I did my research on Google. I looked up, I've never been to China. I Googled Shanghai markets, traditional market. I got a good photo. I downloaded the photo, and I just looked at the photo and did my scene. Normally my scenes are about 5 by 5 centimeters. This one was 3 times that. So it takes up about a quarter of the page. One of those big square scenes. And I filled it with detail. And I even go so far as using Google Translate to type in, the sort of things you'd see on a market, like duck restaurant or something. I type that in Google Translate. It comes out in Mandarin Chinese, in the characters. And Google is so amazing for that. And I just copy those characters and paste them into my editing software for the text. So it's really authentic. You've got real authentic Chinese writing, and that scene took me about 2 days, whereas normally one scene I can do it in 10 minutes. So that was tough.
Yeah, I can sympathize, having dabbled in art myself. It sounds like a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, but it's worth it.
Okay, so do you have a favorite scene?
I think I have several favorite, but one of my favorite ones is when he meets the Yeti, because I thought, let's have a bit of fun, right? This is a book that's educational. There's a lot of non-fiction in there. It's all based on research, but I thought we've got to mix it up with a bit of fun as well. And so I have Captain Polo go and see the Dalai Lama in Tibet, because the Dalai Lama is one of the characters I actually caricatured, because he has a lot of really cool messages about climate change. Yeah, so I wanted to get him in there. But I thought, when he leaves the monastery, what am I going to do? And I thought, let's have him run into a snowstorm, and then by accident run into the Yeti. So that's what happens. And the Yeti is very upset because there's less snow in the Himalayas than there was before. And that's true. That's a fact. It's becoming more and more rain rather than snow, and it's a very serious issue. So I thought I can hit the climate change argument with a bit of fun, putting a fictional character in called the Yeti. And I made the Yeti like really, really, really stupid and huge. And so huge that for once he's the one who shakes Captain Polo and says, "I want snow, give me snow right now, I want snow." And there's no way so Captain Polo is trying to reason with the Yeti like one reasons with a drunk, right? The drunk is just, you can't converse with a drunk. And Captain Polo is trying to reason and explain why there's less snow. But Yeti doesn't want to know the reason. He just says, "Me want snow, sort out snow now." And he rattles this Captain Polo. He's about 3 times his size. And I just love that, because I was laughing as I was drawing it and writing the dialogues. So I guess that would be my number one scene.
Okay, so when you were doing research for the various scenes and situations, did you come across anything that surprised you or that you found interesting?
Yes. Well, what I was telling you before about the Syrian war and the climate change background to that was very surprising to me. I was also surprised. To find out about a lot of the migrants in Europe coming from North Africa are actually displaced people from their home countries, not only by drought, but also by political instability, repressive regimes, forcing them out of their countries to look for a better life anywhere they can, and so they come to Europe. And so that was something I also explored a little bit in my book, and it surprised me. I'm trying to think, because the book is, it's 88. The original, the 3-book series is a total of about almost 100 pages. And so, it goes around the world. It's quite amazing how serious the issues are in the oceanic islands of the Pacific, how these island nations are actually literally being overtaken by the sea. People are losing their homes literally by being flooded. And, you can imagine what that does to drinking water and crops. It's not just the sea coming to lap your feet when you're in your bed, but it's also losing access to drinking water. So that was surprising. That was a real wake-up call for me, how serious that is. So I made sure I got that in there, yeah.
Yeah, I would think the saltwater contamination would do a lot of damage.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so what about your secondary characters? Are any of them a little quirky,
yes,
like to steal the scenes?
Yes. Okay, so in the first book, Captain Polo finds himself in possession of a cap, as I've explained before. It's a sailor's cap. It's actually a fishing captain's cap. And the original character whose cap it belongs to appears in the first book as a fishing captain whose boat is in a storm, the same storm that pitches Polo's iceberg into the sea. They happen to be close by pure coincidence, and this cap flies off in the wind from the fishing boat and lands in the water and lands right on Polo's head as he emerges from the sea, you see. And that's how he gets that cap. The scene goes on to develop how he gets the boat and everything, but that's not the point. The point is that character whose cap has flown off is someone I'm developing in book 4, which is going to come out on the 27th of February, book 4 of the series. And it's a character who is going to be like a bumbling villain. He's obsessed with the fact that the bear got his cap, and he wants his cap back because that cap was given to him by his grandfather, and it's his only legacy. And it's a very, very precious possession. And so I thought I'd go a little bit crazy and exploit this storyline. And the idea is to have this bumbling villain who always makes mistakes. And it's a bit like the Looney Tunes characters, like Wile E. Coyote, where he does everything to get what he wants and he always backfires. And things blow up in his face and stuff like that. I thought that was a funny thing to include in the book. So this fishing captain is called Connor. He's from Ireland, and he's feisty, he's red-headed, red-bearded, red moustaches, he's always angry, and he just always gets it wrong. And so that's a character who's fun to develop. And another one is at the end of book 3, Captain Polo escapes from London Zoo, where he was mistakenly captured. And as he escapes, his attention is attracted to a little cage with a penguin in it. And the penguin says, "Hey, let me out, man. Don't leave me in here." And so Polo thinks, yeah, why not? I'll let the penguin out. So they escape together, and Polo convinces the penguin to come home with him to the North Pole. Now, we all know that penguins don't live in the North Pole. They live in the South Pole. But I thought it would be interesting to bring this penguin into it. And at the end of book 3, that was all he was, just a character who went along with Polo because he wanted to escape from the zoo. In book 4, I'm developing that character as well. He's actually becoming the sidekick. He's becoming Polo's sidekick. So there's a Batman and Robin relationship going on there. And the penguin, he's a badass penguin. He's anyone who's seen Wallace and Gromit animated movies know the first one, I think it is, has some penguins in it who are thieves. And that penguin is based on them. He's inspired by them. And he's a penguin who, again, like those crazy cartoons on TV, if he needs a cannon, he's capable of pulling one out from behind his back. He can make things appear out of thin air because he's that kind of character. And I'm developing him in book 4. He always gets his way, but he can't speak. He can't talk like Polo can. But he's very smart. And I'm developing him so that he's from a rebellious sidekick. He's evolving. I want to make him into Polo's full-time kind of second in command, a bit like a friend. and I'm trying to see where that goes. I'm not quite sure what the ending of that will be, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, well, it sounds like something to look forward to. And I think we'll wrap it up here, and I'll let you tell everybody
Okay.
where they can find you and your books.
Thank you. Well, I have a website. It's alanhesse.com. So ALANHESSE.com. And I guess that's the best place to go, because that's where I'll have all the links to the other places. You can see all the books there. And the books are available as ebooks, and some of them as print books as well. And all the links are on my website. So it's a good place to go. I don't only use Amazon, I also use other stores. And so, there are different links. So just to keep it short, I think my website is the best place. So once again, that's ALANHESSE.com.
Okay, and the Amazon link to the series is in the description of this video too, if anyone wants to check it out. And so thank you for being here. It was a pleasure chatting with you. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you, Anita. I enjoyed it too.
And join us for more authors next weekend. And that's all for now. Bye.
Bye.